In this episode 1 of the SageMaker cost optimization series, I will explain what a SageMaker serverless endpoint is and how it can help you save thousands in costs. I will also share real-world scenarios where serverless endpoints are the best choice, and also when they are not ideal. Finally, I will walk you through a hands-on demo on how to deploy a SageMaker serverless endpoint. If that sounds interesting to you, then let's jump right in. So, what is serverless endpoint and why should we consider it for SageMaker model deployment? Number one, because it is pay per inference instead of pay per hour. So you only pay when your model is actually used. Unlike with SageMaker real-time endpoints where you are billed for the entire hour, even if the model is idle, here you are charged per request. This is cost efficient, especially for workloads with unpredictable traffic. Number two, automatic scaling from 0 to thousands of requests. The system scales automatically. If you have no user, it sits at 0. The moment the requests come in, it can scale up seamlessly to handle thousands of requests. You don't need to manually provision or configure the servers. Number three, no ideal cost when not in use. So if no one is actually calling your model, you pay nothing. This eliminates wasted spend on the idle infrastructure, which is a big advantage for sporadic or low traffic workloads. The last but not the least is because there is built-in load balancing, meaning you don't need to worry about distributing traffic across your provisioned infrastructure. Also, SageMaker enables high availability and fault tolerance by automatically deploying those compute resources across multiple availability zones within a single region. So if one AZ experiences an outage, your endpoint remains available because other instances in different AZs can continue to serve inference requests. Now that we have gone over the benefits of using SageMaker serverless endpoints, let's move on to discuss when to use a SageMaker serverless endpoint. So if your workload is unpredictable or variable, it is a good use case for utilizing SageMaker serverless endpoint. If you are doing a form of development or testing, or let's say for instance you are building an MVP or you're just working on a portfolio project you want to share with other people, and you want to keep costs low while doing that, then serverless endpoint is a good one to use in that use case. Number three, if you are building an application where cost is at the topmost priority for you, then you may also consider using SageMaker serverless endpoint. Now, it's not in all cases that it makes sense to use SageMaker serverless endpoint. There are use cases where it's just not ideal to use it. For example, if you are having a consistent high volume traffic, from morning till night, it may just make sense to use a real-time SageMaker endpoint. If your application requires ultra low latency, then it makes sense to not use SageMaker serverless endpoint. This is because SageMaker serverless endpoints can cold start, meaning the first request after an inactivity is slower. For mission critical apps needing instant responses, this delay can be very, very risky. Also, if you are trying to deploy very large models, like those large language models that are like 5 gigs, 6 gigs, 10 gigs, it will not be ideal. Serverless endpoints have limits on model memory size. The highest I think it can accommodate is 6 gigabytes. So large models requiring more than 6 gigabytes of memory cannot be deployed on serverless endpoints. It will need dedicated instances with more memory and compute. So real-time endpoint will be most suited for those kind of models, deploying those kind of models. So let me quickly walk you through a cost comparison analysis between a real-time endpoint and a serverless SageMaker endpoint, so you can begin to appreciate how using a serverless endpoint can save you cost. So let's assume this is a real-time endpoint and we deploy this ML5.large instance. So each hour you pay something about $0.096, and then that will come out in a month. The cost will be like approximately $70, and the annual cost is going to be something close to $829. Now, even if you don't use this instance and it's just running, hopefully that's not the case, you're still going to pay this $829 at the end of the year. Now, let's assume you deployed a serverless endpoint and you're having each request is about 2 seconds and the number of requests is about 10,000 per month. You're just going to be paying something like 2 cents per month, and your annual cost will be like less than $3. That's about 99.7% savings. Now, let me add some caveats. In production environment, when you deploy a serverless endpoint, most likely you're also going to deploy a warm instance or something we call provisional concurrency, so that there will always be a warm instance ready to receive traffic. In that case, the cost will be bigger than what you're seeing here. Uh, it will be reasonably bigger than what you're seeing here, but it will still be way less than deploying a real-time endpoint. So the goal here is just know when it makes sense to use serverless endpoint and use it. And if it doesn't make sense, just leave it. Okay, now let us move on to demo time so I can show you exactly how to deploy your model using the SageMaker serverless endpoint. All right, so let's get started on the demo. So this notebook, we already have all the codes, and I kind of explains what each code block is doing with the markdown here. So first of all, we are gonna be importing all our necessary libraries, and the two main ones I want you to take note of is the Boto3 and the SageMaker. Boto3 is the Python SDK for interacting with AWS resources, and SageMaker is like for specifically interacting with SageMaker service. So let's go ahead and import it. So we are done with importing our necessary libraries. So we'll set up our SageMaker environment, and we are just using Boto3 to, set up the SageMaker service and, getting my account number, region, and role. Remember, role is very critical. It lets you, it is something that gives you access to the SageMaker services like S3 Bucket, SageMaker service, and the rest of them. Hopefully, you guys are already familiar with all this. So we are done, and now when I click on this, it will download the model we want to deploy from Hugging Face. The model I want to deploy is Clip VITB32, but I've already downloaded it, as you can see here, so I don't want to re-download it. It will mess up my setup, so I'll leave this part. And also, the next step after downloading this is to zip up the model into model.tar.js, which is whenever you want to deploy a model using SageMaker, you have to zip up your model like this. So basically, I am zipping up all the content, all the codes in this. Basically, I'm zipping up all these code files here into model.tar.js. But before you do the zipping, you have to add this folder, which includes your inference.py and your requirement.txt. This tells SageMaker how to serve your model, and that is this code. How the inputs to the model and what the output to the model should be. So this is where you state all that, and this just tells the model, the container that will serve this model, what dependencies it needs to install. Okay, so once you do that, then you upload that model that has been that I have zipped up to AWS. That's exactly what I'm doing here. I'm uploading it to a bucket called AWS Portfolio Projects. And if I got my AWS bucket, you're gonna see this, but I will not do that. Maybe I should do that just to show you guys. Alright, so this is the S3 bucket I was talking about, and you can see that the model has already been uploaded to this S3 bucket, and look at the model.tar.js. So let's get back on the demo. Now, once the model is uploaded, the next thing is to create a model. I know it's confusing, but what we're actually trying to do here is I want to tell SageMaker the container we are going to be using to run this model, and also the path to get the model, which is what we are specifying here when we said model data, and we've mentioned it here. And also we are telling it that the mode is single model, meaning it's going to run just this one single model. In some instances, you can specify multiple, which means the container you run should be able to serve multiple models. Also, the environment HF task is very critical. Here, I just want the model to return me the features or the embeddings. I don't want it to return me a prediction. So that's why I'm specifically specifying that here. Now, when we specify all these, we'll go ahead and run the model or create the model. So it has created a model called normalized B32 model, blah, blah, blah. Right. Okay. So when you are done with that, then you have to create your endpoint configuration, which is what we are doing here. Endpoint configuration tells SageMaker how to configure your endpoint. So here we are telling it to use the model we've created, which is this model name, which maps to this or this. Sorry. This rather, and then we are also specifying our model size, like we are specifying 5 gig, and we are saying mass concurrency. We are telling it that the serverless endpoint, we're expecting like maximum of 5 requests concurrently, and we also provisioning one. We are doing one provision. We are doing provision concurrency of 1, which means we are asking for SageMaker to set up one warm instance. So this code is the main setting up of SageMaker serverless endpoint. This is how you set it up. And once you are done, then it's time to deploy the to create that endpoint using the endpoint name that you choose, and then your endpoint config, which is basically this. So in this line of code, I'm just saying, if the endpoint already exists, just update it. If it does not, which is with this line, with this code here, but if it does not exist yet, then just create a new one. So I'm going to run this and hope. Oh, sorry, I've not run this one. So let me run it. So it has created the endpoint. Now we are going to it has created the endpoint config. Now we are going to go ahead and create the endpoint by running this code here. So let's see what happens. So it is creating the endpoint, which means the endpoint does not exist yet. Now we have to wait for this endpoint to finish creating. So we're going to be monitoring it here. It takes a while, so I'll just pause the video and wait for when it is done, and we'll get back to the demo. So hooray, we are done with the model deployment. You can see that the endpoint is ready. So now it's time for us to test this endpoint and see if it's working as expected. So I want to, wait, let me double check the path I'm on to even see now if I need to move or not. Okay, I'm already on the right path, so I will ignore this other line of code. So let's go and check. I'm passing this image. It's just my image of AWS dashboard. So I'm passing it, and I want it to get me the embedding of this image. So let's run and see. And also remember, I'm invoking this endpoint I just deployed, and the name of that endpoint is normalized B32. Remember, that was the name I used as the endpoint name over here. So let's try and see if we're going to get back our embeddings. So it's running. Hooray! So you can see that so we're able to get back something from this endpoint. So it is working, and it's working as expected. So hopefully you've been able to gain insight on how you can deploy your own SageMaker serverless endpoint. If you have any question or any comment, feel free to leave it in the comment section. Thank you, and I will talk to you guys later. Bye.